How to get Dutch's pipe request in Red Dead Redemption 2. In this walkthrough tutorial, I'm going to show you exactly how I triggered the item request in each chapter, as well as the exact point in the story you'll be able to trigger it. Now, Dutch's pipe request can only be triggered at specific points in chapters 2, 3 and 4. The earliest and easiest way to trigger this item request is at the very beginning of chapter 2, immediately after the gang moves to Horseshoe Overlook. There's a long cutscene that finishes with Hosea saying he's going to read a book.
And you?
I'm gonna read a book.
Once that cutscene is finished, don't save the game and Dutch will eventually come over to talk to you.
Oh, Arthur, my boy. My dear boy.
What's going on?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
After that chat, Dutch will light his cigar and walk to the other side of his tent. At this point, we just have to wait until he moves again. Eventually, Dutch will walk back around his tent and then stand on the right hand side of the entrance. This is the cue to then interact with him and he'll give you his pipe item request.
Arthur.
How's a cigar?
Not bad. But sometimes I prefer a pipe. I've been meaning to get one for ages. I left the old one in.
And Blackwater, I know. Well, if I find one, you can have it.
Well, you are a gentleman, Mr. Morgan. I raised you well.
Oh, don't take too much pride in your work.
As this happens at the very beginning of chapter 2, a lot of people miss it. If that's you, don't worry, we can still trigger it in chapter 3 and chapter 4. There are 2 points in the story in chapter 3 where we can reliably trigger Dutch's pipe request. The first is after completing American Distillation, and the second is after completing Blessed are the Peacemakers. Once you're at the correct point in the story, the main way to trigger these item requests is just to spend time in camp. The first trigger point is early on, immediately after completing the mission American Distillation. So this next bit will just be me interacting with the characters, walking a few laps, greeting everyone I see, and doing the occasional chore. Like all camp item requests, Dutch's pipe request will only trigger between the times of 8 AM and 8 PM. After you've spent some time in camp, it might feel like it's quietened down a bit and no new interactions are happening. If that's the case, you just need to ride out of camp and back. So all I do is ride up the entrance path all the way to the main path and then back again. Once done, the camp interactions will have reset, and that should give us another chance to trigger Dutch's pipe request. What I normally do when I return to camp is talk to Dutch straight away. This gets his interaction out of the way, so he might be able to load the one that I want.
You okay, Arthur?
Never better.
Me neither. Me neither.
Now it's just a case of following the same steps as before, spending time in camp, interacting with everyone, and doing the occasional chore. It was here I noticed Dutch standing on the right hand side of his tent smoking his cigar, just like in chapter 2, and that's the cue we've been waiting for. Just go over and talk to him and he should give you his pipe item request.
Arthur.
How's a cigar?
Not bad. But sometimes I prefer a pipe. I've been meaning to get one for ages. I left the old one in.
And Blackwater, I know.
So this time the request triggered around 3:30 PM. And if you're interested, here are the missions I had completed up to that point. Now the second trigger point in chapter 3 is immediately after completing the mission Blessed are the Peacemakers. So here I'm going to use the exact same process we just used to trigger the item request. Spending time in camp between 8 AM and 8 PM, interacting with the gang, doing the occasional chore and resetting the interactions by leaving and coming back to camp. So as I was doing my second chore, I noticed Dutch standing on the right hand side of his tent, smoking his cigar. And again, this is the cue you're looking for. So just go over and talk to him and he'll give you his pipe item request.
Arthur.
How's a cigar?
Not bad. But sometimes I prefer a pipe. I've been meaning to get one for ages. I left the old one in.
And Blackwater, I know.
If you followed everything to this point and still haven't triggered it, just keep following the same process we've been doing and Dutch will eventually trigger the request. This time it triggered around 1 PM, and again, here are the missions I had completed up to that point. The final trigger point is late in chapter 4, immediately after completing the mission Revenge is a Dish Best Eaten, but there's one important detail. You need to have at least one other main mission still available, either A Fine Night of Debauchery or American Fathers 1. Once you're at that point in chapter 4, just follow the exact same trigger method as we've used in chapter 3. Spend time in camp between 8 AM and 8 PM, interact with the gang, do the occasional chore and reset interactions by leaving and coming back to camp. It's here I noticed Dutch was smoking his cigar on the porch next to the chair, and this is the cue you're looking for in Chapter 4. So just talk to him and he'll give you his pipe item request.
Arthur,
How's the cigar?
not bad, but sometimes I prefer a pipe.
If you're interested, here are the missions I had completed up to that point. As you can see, I had just completed Revenge is a Dish Best Eaten, but neither A Fine Night at the Butchery or American Fathers 1 were completed when I triggered the request, but it will still trigger if you've completed only one of those. Once you've actually triggered the request, we now just need to find Dutch a pipe. Luckily, we can grab one at Vetter's Echo, which can be found at this location on the map. The cabin at Vetter's Echo also gives us the opportunity to get a perfect bear pelt, so I'm going to make a quick stop on the way where I can grab some flight feathers to craft an improved arrow. Let's head towards Vetter's Echo. I'll see you guys over there. As I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to quickly grab some flight feathers to craft an improved arrow for the grizzly bear inside the cabin. This is an optional step for you guys if you want to bag yourself a perfect bear pelt whilst grabbing Dutch's pipe. With that done, let's head on to Vetter's Echo. Once there, I recommend doing a manual save, just in case you get mauled to death. Now grab your bow and head round the back of the cabin. Also, don't forget to equip your improved arrow. Headshot the bear with your improved arrow,
Stay there now.
and you've also now bagged yourself a perfect bear pelt. If any of that didn't go to plan, just reload your manual save and try again. Now just skin the bear and then head into the cabin. Pipe can be found in the box on the right hand side of the desk. You can also grab 2 cigarette cards for your collection. One is in the top drawer on the right, and the other is on top of the desk on the left. Now we just have to head back to camp and give Dutch his pipe. If you did want to craft anything with your perfect bear pelt, the closest trapper can be found here on the map. However, I'm just going to head back to camp, so I'll see you guys there. If you've made it this far in the video, please consider subscribing to the channel. I make weekly tutorials and put a lot of time, effort and research into each one to make them as helpful as possible. Once in camp, there should be a small flashing exclamation mark on the minimap. This should be Dutch's location. Give him the pipe to complete his item request.
So, I found you a pipe.
Well, will you look at that? You want these? I stole them anyway.
Sure, why not?
Once completed, his reward is a unique pair of Vaquero Rider Spurs. If you've not seen them before, they look pretty decent, so let's quickly try them on. To equip them, head over to your wardrobe, go down to Spurs, and they'll be there, ready to equip. They're a pretty cool addition to Arthur's wardrobe, and one of the easiest items to miss in the entire game. And that's how to get Dutch's pipe request in Red Dead Redemption 2. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.